Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are recording. It's good to see you all. We're going to get started in 2 minutes so people can sort through that registration process. In the meantime, I would love to hear who's in the room. So find the chat and tell us your name, tell us your college, and tell us your role. My name is Crystal. I am the Center for Academic Success Director at Los Angeles Pierce College. And I'm also a coordinator for the California Community Colleges Success Network, or 3CSN, which is the organization that brings us this fine workshop every Friday at 3 p.m. So let us know in the chat who you are. So we got Lindsay, grad student at Cal State Northridge. Thank you for getting us rolling. Who else do we have in the room? Find the chat, tell us your name, tell us your college, tell us your role. Amanda, Orange Coast? Is it Orange Coast, Amanda?
Yeah, Orange Coast College.
Oh, cool. Very awesome. Sup, Chris? Long time no tomato.
Long time no tomato.
Good to see you. Chris in the Writing Center. Chris and I go back several years. It's good to see you in one of our workshops again.
Yay.
Together at last. Together for okay, we're recording, Crystal. Don't sing Annie. Okay. Hey, Cameron, good to see you. Oh, we got V or Vi. How do I say your name?
It's V.
Nice to meet you, V. Thanks for being here. Very cool. Sup, Alex? Folsom Lake. Folsom Lake's really been representing, Alex. How did you find out about this workshop?
One of my superiors actually sent us the email and was like, hey, this is good. Sorry about that. That's the one. It's a good kind of refresher if you've already kind of been introduced into it. I'm just starting as a peer mentor, so
Cool.
yeah, good skills.
Awesome. And Alex really stayed and partied with us last time, which was very, very cool. So, hey, all right, we're going to get started. Keep letting us know who you are, what college you're from, so we can kind of see the diversity of schools, roles, and so on in the chat. We're going to get started with our formal presentation. So again, my name is Crystal. I'm the director of the Center for Academic Success at Pierce College, and I'm also a coordinator for 3CSN, which is the California Community Colleges Success Network, which sponsors this peer education party that we get to throw every Thursday at 3 o'clock. Today, we're going to talk about how to start your session, your tutoring session, or it could be your classroom, your office hours, or anything else, by making it clear to our students what they can expect and what the learning environment will look like to help prepare people for the learning ahead. So I already introduced me. I'm going to have our presenters in this order unmute themselves and say who they are.
Hi, my name is Lindsay. Good to see you all.
Hi, my name is Cameron. It's great to be here and be a part of this wonderful experience.
Hi, I'm Madushi. Nice to see everyone today.
All right, so these are our peer educators or former peer educators from Pierce College who helped us put this and the next 2 workshops together. So it'll be all us all the time for the next couple of weeks, so come on back. The way this is going to work is you're going to start off muted, but you will not end muted. We definitely want your participation. So type in the chat, raise your Zoom hand. If you can't find your Zoom hand, put a 1 in the chat and we'll call on you. Madushi is going to be keeping an eye on the chat to make sure that folks' questions and comments are attended to. So go ahead and put it there. All the action starts with that little black bar at the bottom. You find the chat button. If you haven't already, find it and tell us your name, your college, and your role. And also there's a lot of action where that reactions button is. That's where you can raise your hand, but it's also where you can give us a smiley face or a laughing face or a heart or a thumbs up or a clap, which we also very much appreciate. So we know you're alive, because a lot of you are just black screens with white text, which by the way is fine. But it's always nice to get people to react in different nonverbal ways in Zoom. So please feel free to use those as well. Today, we're going to do 2 things. We're going to talk about norms or community agreements that you would like to have in your peer education session. And we're going to explore a few ways for you to communicate those norms and expectations in your session going forward. So we'll do some samples and we'll also show you how you can do it on your own in your sessions. We like to have community agreements for our discussion on community agreements because we are just that meta. So here is what we can expect from our session today so we can wrap our minds and our arms around the learning. So first of all, be ready to engage in activities actively because this doesn't work unless you are actively participating. So get ready to be present and do some activities, watch some videos, and give us some feedback in that chat. Do affirm other people's questions, confusions, and ideas. Norms and expectations is kind of new for some people. They're not super used to this kind of education. So it might be kind of weird. It might be a little fish out of water for you or for somebody else. So just be really extra kind and respectful, and do feel free to ask those questions in the chat. We are going to do breakout rooms today. So if you're in listen only mode, you can't participate in a breakout. You can private chat Lindsay and they will take you out of the breakout rooms because we want to make sure that those breakout rooms are really strong and awesome. And just finally, just let's remember to be kind to each other. It is such a crazy, mad pile of chaos out there. And it's really hard to learn in a pile of chaos. So learning does require risk, and risk just requires trust and kindness. So let's just commit to being a little extra kind to each other, give out those hearts, tell us how we're doing, and just really affirm and encourage other people to participate. Thanks, Madushi. Are there any questions about these norms or agreements before we begin? All right, then let's talk about why we would spend time talking about norms and expectations. I've got content to cover. I don't have time to talk about norms and expectations, right? Wrong. So let's talk about why you should take even just 30 seconds, if not a larger chunk of time, to really set out what you expect from students and what students can expect from you. We talk about these things at the beginning of our session because norms and expectations are a natural everyday part of interaction between people. They are the unspoken rules. They are the unspoken assumptions that we make about how we're going to interact. When you go into a grocery store, you have assumptions about what your role is and what the person who's checking you out is, right? When you go into a classroom, you have certain norms and expectations about how it's going to go. In a tutoring session, you also, as a peer educator, have some pretty clear expectations about how that session is going to go. Your student is also going to have some expectations or some secret assumptions about how they think that tutoring session is going to go. The problem is that if we don't make them explicit, sometimes we find that they clash, right? The student might think that behaviors are acceptable that are not. You might think behaviors that are acceptable that are not. And this, more often than not, leads to, at very least, a lack of learning, right? And at very most, sometimes conflicts between the tutors and the students that really could have been avoided if we had just backed up and talked about what we expect and made explicit our assumptions right there in the beginning. Also, I just want to keep in mind that norms and expectations, if they stay implicit, if we don't talk about them, they tend to empower those who already have the cultural capital in the room. So those of us who already know how to interact, those of us who already feel the most comfortable and the most empowered to interact, we're the ones who win if you don't talk about those norms and expectations. People who might be new to this setting or feel uncomfortable in the setting, they're much less likely to engage and more likely to fall behind if we don't just take a few minutes to talk about how the learning will work and the ways in which people can engage. So to combat all of this madness, we can just take 30 seconds, right? Just 30 seconds to tell people what the norms and expectations are. Or we can just take 30 minutes. I've taken an hour and a half to set norms and expectations. There's a huge range and variety of ways that you can communicate your norms and expectations. No matter how you do it, just make sure you do it in some way. And we'll share an example of the 30-second norms. Specifically, we did that at the beginning of our session, right? I just said, here are the norms and expectations. That took 30 seconds, right? We'll also go through some other examples of how to set those norms and expectations. And we'll show you a range from the very, very short to the much more complex. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Cameron, who's going to give us a couple of examples about what we're talking about when we say norms and expectations.
Thank you so much, Crystal. That was wonderful. All right, everyone. So one of the most important things to remember is that we cannot assume our expectations match the expectations of our students. There will be norms that for some are common knowledge and for others are new and unheard of. So don't make an assumption about what people know. It generally can cause problems. All right, so the next thing, these are norms that we can establish. They are not what we have to do. These are proactive statements. You can tell people how to act, not to act. So instead of telling you, I don't want you to do this, instead say, I would like if we did this. These norms can be set during a meeting. Some apply for individual settings, others apply for group sessions. We want to use strength-based affirming statements that do not warn or pre-shame students. So here are some norms that can be set. Confusion is cool. We are all here to learn. Participate actively. Be present. Take turns. Everyone gets a chance to share. So that means like raise your hand, type in the chat. These are things you can do. Kindness is key. Learning is hard. Be respectful and supportive of each other. These are example norms. You don't have to use them. They can work for some settings and they don't for others. All right. We often use these in online environments or even in person. But if we have more time or need to go deeper, here are other norms we can use. We may use one or all, but we often use these norms during our sessions with tutees and students at the Center for Academic Success. So here are some. Assume the best intentions. If you do not like something you hear, please speak up, but do so respectful and offer a solution. If you do not usually share, try to find a way to share out today. If you usually share a lot, encourage someone to participate in some other ways as well today. We maintain respectful language. Everyone is welcome here. That includes all races, ethnicities, religions, sexual orientations, genders, and gender identities. We may not get to everyone's questions, so email me or come back tomorrow. There's always another day. And lastly, we have 30 minutes together. Let's make the most of it. So as you can see, these are shame-free, strength-based norms, and you don't have to use all of them. You can use some, you can use none. Whatever works in your setting works best. And now, these are context-specific norms. Each subject is going to have a different set of norms that you're going to establish with students. They're not all the same. They're not universal. Everything is fluid. So let's go with sociology. These topics can be triggering. Agree to use respectful language. Let me know in private chat if you hear something that makes you feel triggered. ESL, we're going to participate and communicate in English today. And my subject, political science, there's a lot of there are a lot of political affiliations here today. Let's agree to have a civil and respectful dialogue. As I've said, we learn as we go. These evolve as with our experience. So it's not a static, it's a fluid situation when it comes to setting norms and expectations. All right, sometimes when we have time, we ask other people to help set guidelines or tips. This is about asking others about helping set more norms. You don't have to use all of these. You can use some of these. These are only suggestions. These are norms that we use at the Center for Academic Success. So here are some. Are there any other guidelines or tips that you think we should follow today to make this session move smoothly? Are there ways that we can interact today that can help us all learn? Think about what has worked well on your online learning experience so far, and make suggestions by raising your hand or typing them in the chat. So again, to reinforce that these are shame-free, strength-based, no pre-warning kind of norms that we're using. And these really help set the expectations of students and mentors or tutees in sessions.
All right, so there's construction happening outside. Hopefully you can't hear that. So we do want, of course, to think about what we want the students to know in the session. So we want to spend just a few minutes, think, write, type, meditate about the following questions. So when you're in a session with the student, what is it exactly that you want them to know about how your session's going to go? Now that you're thinking about that, how are you going to use some strengths-based shame-free language to ensure that they understand how they are to act or how they are expected to act and not how not to act? So we're just going to take a few minutes to think about this. And you can share your norms in the chat, or you can just write it down, on your own paper, wherever you like. Are there any questions before we set the timer? All right, we'll go ahead and set the timer for 3 minutes. So think, write, type, meditate on these 2 questions.
And also when you're ready, we would love to see those norms that you want to establish in your session in the chat. So you don't have to share, but boy, we sure would love it.
Go ahead and add your final thoughts to the chat. I encourage you all to read some of the comments, colleagues as well. And so we use this as a way to prime you for what we're going to do next. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So we love to show you what this looks like in action, because it's all good theorizing and talking about how to set norms, but if we don't know what it actually looks like, sometimes we freeze up and we're like, I can't do norms, and then you move on with the session, right? So we're going to show some videos, 3 different subjects, a different number of students, because we know there's a wide range. Some folks are one-on-one, small group, giant group, workshops, so we wanted to address that concern and the changes that we make when we have those different people. So let's take a look at some of the questions and ways to reflect today on these videos. So what are some of the norms you see? How does the size change what's mentioned? Does the subject matter in terms of what's included? How can you kind of make it different for your specific need, and how could you improve it, see things differently? As always, we mentioned we want to see some reactions. So even as we're going to be watching these videos and reflecting on them, feel free to throw out those reaction buttons. We suggested these 3 buttons if you'd like. If there's something you've done, super awesome, thumbs up. If you're surprised, you're like, oh, I want to try that, we'll give a little surprise face, or clap if you think that was really well done. I know now they allow you to go through all the emojis, so feel free to pick any other emoji if you like. And Crystal is going to pop open some of those videos for us.
All right.
First is a one-on-one session.
Yeah, so we got ESL one-on-one first. So let's see what norms our ESL tutor establishes at the beginning of the session, how he starts his off. Do let me know if you can hear this.
نباشروني تشاني.
والله باش مرحو زهقت من جنب إيرو لأنه مقالتك ما هي إنجليزي فاظن بصير بتشتغل.
Great. So you have an essay and you want us to work on it. So before we start, can we go over some rules together?
Sure.
Okay. So as you know, we will have 30 minutes to go over the essay. Probably we will not be able to go over all of it, but I will try to guide you find the main patterns of the problems, even though we both speak several languages, but let's try to have our session in English, and I love all those languages, by the way. Okay, so we first go over the structure of the essay, and if we had time at the end, we go over grammar as well. So for now, I think that is it. Do you agree with those rules?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool, that's amazing. So can I see the essay prompt?
Yes, let me share my screen.
Thank you.
All right,
Nambashironi.
there you go. Norms in 1 minute.
So let's just take a minute. What did you see? Think, write, or type. Feel free to throw that right in the chat. What did you see Azad doing with our 2T?
I'm gonna unmute myself. All right, here we go.
All right, well, I'm so glad, Cameron and Katie, that you're here today and that you're here a week ahead of your exam. So I know that there are 2 of you here today, so I just want to share a little bit about how this session is going to go. Is that all right?
Sure, yeah, I've never been to tutoring before.
Me neither. So it'd be helpful to know what we're supposed to do.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to just share our community agreements right now. And we're just going to read them over and think about if there's anything we would like to add to these community agreements. So let's just take a couple minutes and do that. All right. Is there anything we would like to add to our community agreements to make the session run more smoothly?
Yeah, can we add raise your hand if you have a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, and can we add take breaks whenever we need to?
Yeah, absolutely. Good idea. All right. Now that we've set our community agreements and kind of know what's going on, let's dive right in. So what have you come to tutoring today for?
Right, there you go. So that was 1 minute and 30 seconds. More people, nice group.
All right,
No, stop it, stop it, stop it, technology. All right, go ahead and take a minute to reflect.
Go ahead and take a minute, throw in the chat what you saw. And apparently we saw a high-tech transition. Now we're going to go to our final video, and this is for a very large group type workshop. And it is going to feature our wonderful Cameron.
All right, here
My
we
name is
go.
Cameron.
Whoops.
It is nice to meet you.
Sorry. Here we go. Here's our last one. Here's a big group. Let's do it.
All of you, welcome to today's midterm group review session. First, I want to set an important norm. We will use respectful, inclusive language throughout this session. I want to start off by saying I don't know all the answers to the questions, so we need to work together to solve the problems. I would like it if you want to talk to either write a response in the chat or use the raise hand button. We don't want everyone talking over each other. I would like it if everyone introduced themselves by putting their names in the chat now. Oh, yes, Crystal.
Hi, I actually haven't been to a group session before, so I don't really know what to expect.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, I've only done one-on-one before.
Well, those are great questions. Group work is a bit different. Sharing is important. I'd rather you share something that you're not 100% about than saying nothing at all. It's okay to be wrong. All right, everyone. Now that we've introduced ourselves, let's move on to the review session. Since we're such a big group, I won't be able to go over everyone's questions. Oh, I see somebody's raising their hands. Yes.
Oh yeah, hi, that's me. I was just wondering how long this session is going for.
That is a great question. We're going for about an hour. We're going to take a 5-minute break at the half-hour mark so everyone can get up, stretch your legs, get a drink, and not feel cramped. Is that good? All right, everyone?
Sounds good.
All right, cool.
All right.
Hi, everyone.
So that one's a little bit more chaotic. I think we've all been there as peer educators or faculty members when you just have some students who just keep asking the questions. Those hands just keep going up and sometimes you just can't manage it or it's hard to. So that one was a little bit more chaotic in a larger group. Tell us what you thought. What did they do? How did that work out? What would you have done if you were in that a situation where you had a whole bunch of students and they all had their hands raised? All right, got some good feedback in the chat. Helping people understand how to participate, managing those questions, taking time in the beginning to make sure everybody feels comfortable and safe before the learning begins. It may feel like, oh boy, I've got a lot to cover. I don't have time to do this. But oftentimes, if you just take a few minutes at the beginning to do this, then you actually end up covering a lot more. So thank you very much for sharing in the chat there. All right. So next up, we are going to talk a little bit about how you use these norms throughout. And then we're actually going to dive into an activity where we're going to set some norms, not just tell our students the norms, but actually create norms together so you can see how to do it with the community, right? So just a couple of final tips. This is how you use your norms in your session, right? So you establish them in the beginning and you're done, right? Everybody behaves beautifully for the rest of the session. There's no digressions and you never have to revisit them ever again, right? wrong, right? It's really important that after you establish those norms, that you keep establishing them and reminding people of the norms again and again and again, right? So even if you have the same session with 25 people, 25 different times, super important to start with the norms every single time. So we have these workshops every week, and we've done it for over a year now, but still we start with the norms every single time. Also, it's really good to remind participants of the norms before activities or when they come up. So it's one thing to say in the beginning, okay, we're all going to raise our hands before we talk, right? But it's another thing to remind people just before the activities when they'll actually need that skill, right? So just before the activity, you might say, okay, we're going to go into a discussion now. Just as a reminder, go ahead and find the chat, put your question there, or raise your hand and we'll call on you. So reminding people what the norms and expectations are throughout the session as appropriate is a really good way to go. Also, you may need to go back to your norms, right? So you set some norms, but then something happened in the session that you didn't realize was going to happen, right? So you might have to go back and revise and revisit. And I'll give you an example. I was conducting a workshop with about 150 incoming freshmen over the summer. And we had told people to raise their hands and we would call on them. And we had one student who just kept raising their hand over and 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 over again. And we couldn't get through our presentation because the hand never went down. And then if we didn't respond to the hand, he would unmute himself and be like, I had a question, right? So we didn't establish, we did say, raise your hands if you had a question, but we never said, we may not stop right away and answer your question, right? And so we had to go back and revisit that and say, okay, so the norm now is, right, you're going to raise your hand if you have a question, and we'll have 3 points during the presentation where we stop and take questions. And we may not be able to get to your question. And if we can't get into your question, here's how you handle that situation, right? So you may have to revise when there are these digressions that you didn't really see coming or you didn't make explicit in the first place, right? So really important that it is fluid, that you keep an open mind, and that you learn as you go and you change it with your experiences. What might change your norms? Well, the topic or the activity, that might change your norms. The level of busyness that you have, the norms with one person is super different than like camera session where you had 10 different people all asking questions at the same time, right? How many new students do you have in the room? That might change which norms you talk about or how you set those expectations. The subject, political science, might have very different norms from, say, math, right? And just keep in mind that it is a fluid and learning experience. So if it goes wrong, that's fine. Things are supposed to go wrong. That's part of life, right? It's part of the learning. It's okay if it goes wrong. It's all part of the learning experience. You goofed, you didn't like it, you're just going to do it differently next time. Remember that it's all iterative and it's all learning. We're all figuring it out as we go. So next we're going to do a group activity. So far, we've really only talked to you about different ways to tell students what your norms are. But there is a way to develop norms with your students, and we're going to go over that one now. So this means it is going to be group work. So if you can't be in this, do tell Lindsay. And Madushi is going to walk us through this activity. Take it away, Madushi.
Hi, thank you, Crystal, so much. So as Crystal mentioned, we are going to do a group activity, and the next slide is going to tell you what exactly the activity is. So today we're going to be doing a think, pair, share. So I will explain the process to you all, not just so that we can do it together today, but that so you can use this technique in your own tutoring sessions in the future, because they really do work. We use it in our own trainings and they're always very useful. So let's talk about why we do think, pair, shares. It invites active participation from everyone in the session, not just the presenters info dumping onto you. And it also gives us time to think about all the wonderful information that you've been hearing for the past 20 minutes or so, and gives you time to translate that information, gather your thoughts about it, and build your confidence on that understanding. And finally, it builds trust, connection, and community, which is so important for not only this session, particularly about norms and community agreements, but in most sessions going forward. So again, we're going to have, so now explaining the process of the think, pair, share, pretty self-explanatory, but so first we're going to give you something to think about on your own. And then after you do that, where you're going to meet and practice in small groups or pairs. And that's the part that's going to be in the breakout room. Remember, let Lindsay know if you can't be in one. And then after you're done discussing in your breakout room, we're going to come together and build and share community knowledge. So let's go to the next slide, show you what you're going to be thinking about. So what we'd like you to do is reflect on success. So you can think, type, draw, meditate, however your own process goes, doesn't matter, whatever works for you. So we'd like you to think about a time that you were in a group that successfully learned something. Think about what made that experience successful, like specifically, and then what helped you feel comfortable and or supported. So again, this is a think part of our think, pair, share. So I'm going to give you guys 2 minutes to reflect on these questions. So go ahead.
So now we're going to do the last part of our think, pair, share. Hey, look, I can see Amanda now. I love it. Coming back from the breakout rooms is such a treat where you get to actually see people. Hello. So we're going to go do the last part of our think, pair, share, which is to share. In order to share with the whole group online, we're going to use a collaborative document. So if you would go into the chat and click on that link, you'll find this cool, refreshing blue document here. What we would like you to do, oh, I see the badger, the gopher showing up. All right. So what we would like you to do next is just think back to the conversation that you just had and think about the conditions for powerful learning that you came up with. So what was it that y'all surfaced that make for a powerful learning environment? We'd like you to add those here. We're going to give you 2 minutes and Lindsay's already off. So go ahead and leave those conditions for powerful learning here on this list. I encourage you to skip every other line so you don't write over someone else. And I also encourage you to add only so you avoid erasing other people's work. So you can already see some examples popping up. So somebody might have said being understanding of outside circumstances, judgment-free, shame-free zone is an important condition for learning. You keep going. Tell us what all your conditions are. You can add as many as you'd like. Are there any questions about what we're doing for the next 2 minutes? All right, add it up. Or thank you. I might have my students look at this for 2 minutes and then add to it or ask questions about it. I might also take a moment to ask to clarify some of the norms that I see listed here. And I might also, once we've adopted it, share this with our students and then come back to it each session. So I can just pull it up and maybe we can emphasize a different norm every week or every session, but keep the conversation going so it doesn't slip out of people's minds. So just as by way of an example and also by way of getting a little bit of feedback from you, I read through these as you were putting them up and they are fantastic. Thank you very much. I'm very curious about this one, embracing differences in group members rather than seeing them as a threat or a problem. That is so beautiful and such a wonderful guideline for all of our work, not only in tutoring, but in life. And I'm wondering if the person who wrote this or heard somebody talk about this would just give me a little bit more information, tell me what you mean by that or how we might do that. How can we embrace? Give me an example of how we embrace differences in group members.
I'm the one that wrote that.
Cool.
So I'm the troublemaker. I gave an example in our group about a specific time in which a group of teachers and I were put in a spot where we had to create something, and it really was a challenge for us because we all brought different knowledge bases to bear on the problem. And initially, it seemed like that was going to be difficult for us. Like, I'm an English major, right? I'm an English teacher. I don't know how to make things. I certainly don't know how to make things out of the materials that we were given in this scenario, which was spaghetti strands, marshmallows, and string. So I was like, whoa, but we had a math teacher and we had an engineering teacher. And initially it seemed like we're all different. We don't think the same way. That can't be good. But it couldn't have been less true. I mean, that couldn't have been more wrong is what I mean. We all brought our own specialties to bear on the problem or the task that we were faced with. And it turned out to be very good. So in my group, we talked about how there are scenarios in tutoring and in teaching and in life where it's valuable to have a variety of viewpoints rather than the same viewpoint replicated over and over again in a group.
Wonderful. And I think just saying that out loud before we begin is just a beautiful way to start, right? Just say, like, we all have different backgrounds, different majors, and that is awesome. We're all going to work together and we're going to bring our different strengths to bear. Wonderful. So again, these norms are a great conversation piece. You can get people talking about what they mean. You can get people talking in general. You can get people to elaborate on things. And again, we can come back to them over and over again. So that concludes the first part of our session. So thank you all for participating. So what comes next? So we're going to hang out a little bit and talk about a particular norm called oops and ouch, which is a norm that we establish when you're having controversial conversations in like political science or sociology, where feelings might get hurt, political affiliations and identities might get trampled on, and so on. So we're going to talk about a specific norm for making explicit strategies for disagreements. So if you want to stick around from 4 to 4:30, you're very welcome to do that. We've got some videos, some articles, and some discussions to go over with you. However, if you have to go, that's totally cool. In the chat, I've put in 3 links. Link number 1 is to a call for proposals. If you want to do one of these workshops, we want you, peer educators and learning assistance professionals, to do these. So the first link is a proposal to do one of these workshops in spring 2022. Take the link, think about it, give it to your friends, think about who might want to do one of these, and we would love to hear from you. The second link is a feedback link. That's really important for our funding at the state. So please do go in there and take 5 minutes to give us some feedback. Tell us about what worked. Tell us about what questions that you have so we can improve these, and also so we can get that funding later. Super important to keep these free, right? And then the third link is to more workshops like this. So if you want to come back next week at 3 o'clock, we are going to continue this conversation about how to engage students online. We're going to show you a strategy called a text set, and we're going to talk about specifically how to engage people in the online format, and not just taking face-to-face strategies and trying to shoehorn them into an online setting. What are some opportunities specifically for online communication, engagement, and empowerment? So if you want to come back next week, we'll see you next week. So, but again, we're going to stay on until 4:30. So if you got to go, thank you so much. You can leave now. If you're going to stay, we are going to rock out very soon. Email me if you have any questions. I'm just at crystal@3csn.org. Bye, Amanda. I see you leaving.